Today, we're diving into one of the most unbelievable survival stories ever recorded. The story of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571. And this number, 571, isn't just a flight number. It represents 72 days of pure endurance, pain, and the will to live. Because that's how long 16 people survived, stranded in one of the harshest places on Earth. So let's rewind to how it all began. It's October 12, 1972. A chartered plane, Flight 571, is carrying the Old Christians amateur rugby team, along with their friends and family. Their plan is simple: travel from Uruguay to Chile for a match. But what was supposed to be a short fun trip soon turned into a complete nightmare. Bad weather forced them to stop overnight. The next day, they took off again, unaware that one mistake would change everything. A navigational error made the pilots believe they had already crossed the Andes Mountains. So they began to descend. But they hadn't crossed it yet. Instead, they were heading straight into the mountains. And what happened next was catastrophic. The plane's tail and wings were ripped apart on impact. The front part, with all the passengers inside, turned into a metal sled, sliding down a glacier at over 350 kilometers per hour. Before crashing into a snowbank. It was chaos, but also a miracle. Out of 45 people on board, 33 somehow survived. They were injured, freezing, and stranded thousands of meters high, 80 kilometers off course, completely cut off from the world. In the first few days, they clung to the only thing they had: hope. Hope that rescue teams were on their way. And in fact, search planes were flying above them. On the second day, the survivors even saw 3 planes passing overhead. You can imagine their reaction. Waving, shouting, doing everything possible to get noticed. But their white plane blended perfectly into the snow. No one saw them. And that's when reality started to hit. No one was coming. They were on their own. The mountains turned against them. The snow blinded their eyes. The cold attacked their bodies. And survival became their only mission. Among the survivors, there were only 3 pairs of sunglasses to share. Just imagine, under the blinding snow and burning sun, dozens of people taking turns to protect their eyes. For 8 full days, search teams scanned the Andes. 142 hours of searching, and nothing. No wreckage, no signals, no hope. Eventually, the authorities made a heartbreaking decision. They officially called off the search. To the outside world, Flight 571 no longer existed. Every passenger was presumed dead. But on the mountain, the survivors were still alive. And by pure luck, they managed to get a small transistor radio working. Just in time to hear the devastating announcement themselves. That moment broke them. They weren't just lost anymore. They had been forgotten, given up for dead. The hope that had kept them alive for days was gone in an instant. Now they faced a horrifying reality. No rescue was coming, and they were starving. Their entire food supply, tiny pieces of chocolate, some wine, and scraps from the crash. One survivor famously made a single chocolate-covered peanut last 3 days. But even with extreme rationing, all the food was gone within a week. Think about it. At that altitude, nothing grows. There were no plants, no animals. In desperation, they tried eating the cotton and leather from the plane seats. But it only made them sicker. They had reached an unimaginable crossroads. Either they die waiting, or they do something that defies every human taboo. It was Roberto Canessa, a medical student among them, who finally said what everyone feared. To survive, they would have to eat the bodies of those who had already died. It was a decision born not out of cruelty, but of the most primal instinct to live. A pact none of them would ever forget. But just when it seemed things couldn't get any worse, nature struck again. On the 16th night, a massive avalanche thundered down the mountain, burying the fuselage completely while they slept inside. 8 more people died instantly. Only 19 survivors remained. When they finally dug themselves out from beneath the snow, one truth became painfully clear. Waiting for rescue meant death. If they wanted to live, they had to save themselves. So, with whatever strength they had left, they prepared for one final, desperate expedition. After weeks of unimaginable suffering, the group made a collective decision. Their only chance of survival was to send their strongest members on a final expedition. They chose Nando Parrado, Roberto Canessa, and Tintin Vizintin. To give them a fighting chance, the others gave up what little food they had, their extra rations, so these three could push forward. And then came a moment of pure human ingenuity. Using insulation from the plane, they stitched together a makeshift sleeping bag, their only protection against the freezing nights ahead. With food for just 3 days, they set off toward the west, believing that Chile lay just beyond the next mountain. But after 3 exhausting days of climbing, with no gear, no real equipment, and barely any strength left, they finally reached the summit. And what they saw broke their hearts. Instead of green valleys and life, there was nothing. Just endless snow, stretching in every direction. A white desert of mountains as far as the eye could see. At that moment, Vizintin decided to turn back, to conserve food for the other two. But Parrado and Canessa refused to stop. Even after seeing that endless horizon of despair, they made a choice. They would keep going. And they did, for 10 more days. They trekked through the Andes, an unbelievable 61 kilometers. 9 torturous days of hunger, pain, and exhaustion. And then a miracle. Just as their strength was fading, they saw it. A man on a horse, far across a river. The first human being they'd seen in over 2 months. His name was Sergio Catalan, a Chilean farmer. But the roar of the river was too loud. They couldn't hear each other. So Catalan gestured that he would return mañana, tomorrow. And he did. The next day, he threw a rock across the river. Tied to it was a piece of paper and a pencil. Parrado quickly scribbled a note, a message that would change everything. I come from a plane that fell in the mountains. It was the first contact with the outside world in 70 days. And on December 22nd, 1972, exactly 72 days after the crash, helicopters reached the site. 16 survivors were rescued from the mountains. They had endured the impossible. They had proven that even in the darkest, coldest, most hopeless conditions, the human spirit refuses to die. Their story remains one of the most powerful examples of teamwork, courage, and sheer will to live. And it leaves us with one haunting question. When we're pushed to the edge of survival, what are the true limits of the human will to live?